In a time when water was so scarce in the USA that people would kill for a single drop, most residents had fled in desperation. But Ernest, he believed water could bring life back to the land, trees, crops, all of it. His family stayed, bound by hope. One day, as Ernest was tending to his farm, he caught two strangers trying to break into a small building on his property. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" he shouted, pulling out his gun. One of the men hesitated, but the other drew a weapon. Ernest fired before they could even think, killing the first intruder instantly. The second thief dropped his weapon, begging, "Please. Someone told us there was water here." But Ernest was unmoved. His eyes fell on the gun the thief had dropped a moment later. Another shot rang out. Ernest's son, Joram, who had been nearby, watched in awe and fear, understanding then the lengths his father would go to for their survival. Later, Ernest led his family to check on a hidden pump, hoping it would bring them water. But nothing. Disheartened, they packed up and set out to find the watermen, the ones who controlled access to water, charging high prices for a few precious drops. Ernest traded some goods for water, pleading with them to supply his farm, but they only laughed, demanding more money than he could ever afford. On the way home, their mule collapsed, its legs trembling from exhaustion. Ernest looked at the animal, then at his family, before making the heart-wrenching choice to end its suffering. At home, Ernest's daughter Mary welcomed them with a meal, while Ernest sat, tuning in to a crackly radio. These moments of normalcy were rare and precious, until that night, when Ernest discovered Mary had secretly snuck off to meet her boyfriend, Flame. He was furious, but too exhausted to confront her then. The next morning, Ernest took Joram to an auction. They needed a replacement for their mule, and this time, they bid on a robot named Sim. Despite tough competition, Ernest finally won, though it put him deeper into debt. They stopped by the hospital on their way back to visit Ernest's wife, Catherine. She'd been unable to walk since an accident, now reliant on a costly machine that was all that kept her moving. Days passed, and Ernest worked tirelessly, dreaming of water for his farm. Then one day, Flame showed up again, asking to borrow Sim. Ernest was suspicious, but Flame pressed, promising he'd pay. But Ernest had his limits, and the two men nearly came to blows. The following days were tense. Ernest's encounters with the watermen seemed more promising now, but his rivalry with Flame only intensified. Flame, angry, even threatened Ernest. Soon after, Sim went missing. Suspicious, Ernest tracked down Sam, Flame's father, and learned Flame had left that morning. Ernest knew then who was behind it. One night, while investigating in the mountains, Ernest was ambushed by the Watermen gang. They accused him of theft, convinced Sim had been used to steal from them. Ernest fought desperately, narrowly escaping with his life. When he finally made it home, he found Flame waiting, smug, sure of himself. But Ernest wasn't beaten yet. He tied Flame to Sim, securing the stolen goods with him. They began a scorching trek across the desert, Ernest's rage building with each step as Flame taunted him, even mocking him about Mary. Flame eventually offered him water, only for Ernest to realize it was spiked with alcohol. Dazed, he stumbled, collapsing as Flame took advantage of his weakness. When Ernest came to, Flame was gone, back to his manipulation. Heartbroken, Ernest could only watch as his family struggled under Flame's rule. One day, Joram unearthed the truth. He played back Sim's recordings and saw what Flame had done, saw him betray his father. That night, rain fell on the farm for the first time in years, like a sign, as Joram's determination solidified. The following morning, he tricked Flame into following him into the mountains, to an isolated spot. Flame realized too late what was happening. He began pleading, his arrogance finally broken. But Joram's grief turned to resolve, and he raised his weapon. Returning home, he told Mary that Flame had left, leaving her and the farm in peace. They could finally move forward, providing for Catherine and continuing Ernest's vision.